Matthew Offord.
Deputy Speaker, I certainly stand in support of this motion here today, and I congratulate the honourable member for Stoke-on-Trent South. Indeed, he actually won the Westminster Dog of the Year last year with his German Shepherd Diesel. I was rather concerned that my own Jack Russell Maximus was going to become his own dog snack, so I kept the two dogs well apart. But while I certainly agree with the sentiment, and as someone who has been a vegetarian for almost 35 years, I support this motion not as being a vegetarian because I believe strongly in animal welfare. Indeed, I also urge the member for Stoke-on-Trent to be very careful about the cultural issues. It's already been mentioned that we should not take the ideological imperialistic approach of telling people what they should and should not eat. Indeed, dog has been eaten in countries like China for the last 500 years. And we have to be very careful in our approach. And indeed, back in September, the Foreign and Commonwealth Minister said there are no international norms, laws or agreements governing the trade and consumption of dog and cat meat. Instead, we seek to work with governments around the world to gain agreement to animal welfare standards and to phase out cruel and inhumane farming and trapping practices. Ministers have raised this issue with Chinese counterparts and explained that UK parliamentarians and the public want to see regulation that will bring the practice to an end. Our ambassador in Seoul has delivered similar messages to South Korean authorities. Our officials will continue to highlight our concerns. I certainly will expect the government to continue with that dialogue with those particular countries. But both China and Seoul are not the only places that engage in this kind of activity. In the Cayman Islands, for example, there is the turtle farm. Turtles are bred for the consumption, for human consumption of the meat, even though it's an endangered species, and I pay tribute to the World Animal Protection for their campaign to stop that. And indeed, I think the Chinese authorities could turn around and say to us, why do we glorify programs such as I'm a Celebrity, where people eat things from turkey testicles, fish eyes, live witchetty grubs, kangaroo and ostrich parts of their anatomy, which I'm not even going to mention on the floor of the House. To me, that is also repugnant as well. But the point I want to make is that we have a different relationship with animals in the UK. And we see that, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure that you've seen Pulp Fiction, where both Vincent and indeed Jules have a conversation about why one doesn't eat bacon. And it's because he says it's a filthy animal that eats his own feces. Which Jules replies by saying, do you consider a dog a filthy animal because it eats his own feces? Jules says, I wouldn't go so far as to call a dog filthy, but it's definitely dirty. But dogs got personality. Personality goes a long way. And that's the crux of our relationship with animals in this country. And both the honourable member for Stoke-on-Trent and myself, indeed, are dog owners, and we have a completely different relationship. That doesn't exist in China, where I mentioned there has been severe shortages of food for the last 500 years, and indeed the country has overcome famine to continue to feed their population. But as I said, I am a vegetarian. I strongly believe in people's right to eat meat in this country, and the reason I do so is because of the high animal welfare standards we have in this country that I would like to see across the whole of the world. I would like to see this practice banned, yes, absolutely. I congratulate not only the honourable member for bringing this motion, but also the animal welfare charities, including Soy Dog, who one of my constituents contacted me to say of the valuable and important work that they undertake. But I would also like to see the government working to ensure that the emergence of the middle class in places like China, and indeed the influence of social media, promotes an atmosphere where the consumption of dog meat, either as a delicacy or indeed for people who do not eat other forms of more expensive meat, actually then start to reject consumption of dog meat, so we end this vile practice. Thank you.
Steve Reid.
Thank you, Madam